the door chimed at 0247 hours. Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Corps stood from his desk, hand already on his sidearm. Nobody visited military housing at this hour unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. Through the security feed, he saw nothing but empty corridor and shadow. Then he looked down. A bundle. Cloth wrapping. Movement. Marcus opened the door and found himself staring at an infant. Not human. The child's skin bore the distinctive violet-silver pattern of Veltheran heritage, delicate scales catching the hallway light, large eyes, far too aware for something so small, looked up at him without crying. No parent in sight. No note. No explanation. Marcus lifted the bundle carefully, years of combat training making his movements precise despite the shock. The child weighed almost nothing. Its breathing was rapid but steady. He scanned the corridor with his neural implant, searching for heat signatures, movement, anything that would explain this. Empty? He stepped back inside, door sealing behind him. The apartment's climate control registered the child's temperature as dangerously low. Marcus adjusted the environmental settings and unwrapped the outer layer of fabric. Underneath was a thin blanket, insufficient for Earth's atmospheric conditions. The child had been left to die. Marcus moved to his communication terminal and hesitated. Standard protocol demanded he contact station security immediately. An abandoned alien child on a military installation was a diplomatic incident waiting to explode. The Veltheran Empire and humanity maintained peaceful relations, but they were fragile, built on mutual benefit rather than trust. But if he reported this now, the child would be transferred to holding, processed. Questioned by intelligence officers who would want to know why a Veltheran infant appeared on a human military captain's doorstep. Hours of bureaucracy while the child froze in a sterile medical bay. Marcus looked down at those impossibly large eyes. The infant's hand emerged from the blanket, tiny fingers spreading toward the warmth of his palm. He made his decision. Marcus carried the child to his bedroom and adjusted the sleeping pod's temperature to Veltheran normal. He'd served 2 tours on border stations near Veltheran space. He knew their biology, their environmental needs. The child's breathing began to slow as warmth surrounded it. Now Marcus activated his terminal and searched through xenobiological databases. Veltheran infants required feeding every 4 hours. Their nutritional needs differed significantly from human babies. He had nothing appropriate in his quarters. His options were limited. The station's civilian sector would have supply vendors, but accessing them required leaving the child alone or carrying it through public areas. Either choice invited discovery. Marcus checked the time. 03:02 hours. Morning cycle wouldn't begin for another 3 hours. He could reach the civilian market, acquire supplies, and return before anyone noticed. He wrapped the child in a thermal blanket designed for extreme cold operations. Not ideal, but better than the inadequate fabric it had arrived in. The infant's eyes followed him as he secured the bundle against his chest, using a tactical harness modified for carrying equipment. The corridor outside remained empty. Marcus moved through military housing with practiced silence, avoiding security checkpoints by using maintenance passages. Years of special operations had taught him every blind spot in station surveillance. The civilian sector never truly slept. Even at this hour, a handful of vendors remained open, catering to night shift workers and insomniacs. Marcus found a xenobiology supply store run by a Cortanian merchant whose multiple eye stalks barely glanced up from her inventory pad. Veltheran infant formula. Emergency medical kit compatible with Veltheran physiology. Appropriate clothing for ages 0 to 6 months. The merchant's eye stalk swiveled toward the bundle on his chest. Is that standard requisition? Military dependent. Marcus placed his payment chip on the counter. Expedite processing. The merchant species was known for discretion in business matters. She compiled the supplies without further questions, accepting the inflated payment Marcus offered for her silence. Returning to his quarters proved more dangerous. Dawn cycle had begun and corridors were filling with early shift personnel. Marcus maintained his usual brisk pace, projecting the absolute confidence of an officer on legitimate business. Nobody questioned a captain of the Terran Defense Corps. Back in his apartment, Marcus prepared the formula according to specifications. The child accepted the bottle without resistance, feeding with quiet efficiency. No crying. No fussing. Too calm for an abandoned infant. Marcus examined the bundle again and found what he'd missed in his initial shock. Sewn into the inner lining of the blanket was a small data chip. He extracted it carefully and inserted it into a secured reader, running 3 separate security protocols before accessing its contents. A single message appeared, text only, no audio or video signature. Captain Chen, you saved my life once. Now I ask you to save hers. The Queen's Guard are hunting us. My daughter carries bloodline proof that threatens the crown. If they find her, she dies. If they find me with her, we both die. You are the only human I trust. Please, protect her until I can return. If I cannot return, raise her as your own. I am sorry. Vera. Marcus closed his eyes. Vera. Lieutenant Vera Sethis of the Veltheran Royal Guard. He'd met her during the Frontier Incident 3 years ago, when diplomatic negotiations had collapsed into violence. Marcus and his team had extracted Veltheran civilians caught in crossfire, including several royal household members. Vera had been protecting them, badly injured, refusing to abandon her duty even as she bled out. Marcus had stabilized her and held the position until reinforcements arrived. She'd looked at him much the same way this child was looking at him now, with desperate hope that someone might actually help. The door chimed again. Marcus froze. The infant didn't make a sound, as if she somehow understood danger had arrived. He carefully placed her in the sleeping pod and accessed his security feed. 3 Veltheran royal guards stood in the corridor, full ceremonial armor, weapons holstered but visible, and standing between them, unmistakable in her formal crown and traditional robes, was Queen Lyria Kethval herself. The most powerful being in the Veltheran Empire was at his door at 06:15 hours, demanding entry with the kind of silence that moved star systems. Marcus touched the door release. The panel slid open. Queen Lyria stepped inside alone, her guards remaining in the corridor. She moved with absolute certainty, scanning his apartment with eyes that evaluated and judged in microseconds. Those eyes found the sleeping pod. Found the child. The Queen's expression didn't change. Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. You have something that belongs to the Empire. Marcus stood his ground. Ma'am, I have a child who is abandoned at my door. What I do with her depends entirely on what you tell me next. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that would be discussed in diplomatic circles for years to come. She closed the door, sealing herself inside with him, leaving her guards outside. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone making a decision that could not be unmade. Captain Chen, I need to know if humans truly protect those who cannot protect themselves, or if that is simply another story we tell about your species. She moved toward the sleeping pod, looking down at the infant. Because that child is my sister's daughter, and if I cannot trust you with her life, then I cannot trust your people with the alliance we have built. Marcus kept his voice steady. Why was she left in my door? Because someone in my court wants her dead. Someone close enough to my sister to know her movements. Close enough to me to know that revealing this child's existence would create a succession crisis. The Queen's hands clenched. My sister Vera ran rather than watch her daughter become a political execution. She chose a human soldier she trusted over her own people. And you tracked her here? When I saw where she had been left, I came myself. Immediately. Before anyone else could respond. Queen Lyria turned to face him directly. You have approximately 1 hour before my absence from the royal ship is noticed. Before intelligence officers begin asking questions. Before this becomes an incident neither of our governments can control. Marcus moved to the sleeping pod and looked down at the infant. The child's eyes were open, watching both of them with that unsettling awareness. Too much intelligence for something barely days old. What do you want me to do? I want you to tell me the truth, Captain. Can your species be trusted with our most vulnerable? Or should I take this child back to Velthar and watch the succession wars begin? The infant's hand emerged from the blanket. Those tiny fingers reached toward Marcus, just as they had done when he first found her. He extended his hand and she gripped his finger with surprising strength. Your Majesty, Marcus said quietly, if you're asking whether I'll protect this child with my life, the answer is yes. If you're asking whether I can protect her from an entire empire, the answer is, I don't know, but I'll die trying. Queen Lyria was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her hand over Marcus's, covering both his fingers and the infant's grip. Then we have a problem that requires a very specific solution. The Queen moved to his communications terminal and activated an encrypted channel. Within seconds, a holographic display materialized, showing a star chart. She highlighted a remote system near the edge of human Veltheran space. Outpost 17, Diplomatic Observation Station, Joint Human Veltheran Operation. Small crew. Isolated location. Critical to Alliance operations, but far from any major population center. She turned to face him. How would you like a promotion, Captain Shen? Marcus understood immediately. You're reassigning me. I'm assigning you as Senior Human Liaison to Outpost 17, effective immediately. You will be responsible for maintaining diplomatic protocols and overseeing cultural exchange programs. The Queen's expression remained neutral, but her meaning was clear. You may bring any dependents you wish. The outpost has family accommodations. Its isolation makes it ideal for those who value privacy. And your sister? Vera will be assigned as Veltheran Cultural Liaison to the same outpost. She will be reunited with her daughter in a location where both can be protected, where guards I personally select can watch over them without raising suspicion, where a potential heir can grow up away from court politics and assassination attempts. The Queen paused. Where a human captain can demonstrate that your species' reputation for protecting others is more than propaganda. Marcus looked down at the infant. What about the succession crisis? Someone still wants her dead. Someone in my court. Someone I will identify and neutralize. But that takes time, and time is something this child doesn't have while she remains in Veltheran space. Queen Lyria moved toward the door, then stopped. Captain, you saved my sister's life once. She clearly believes you can save her daughter's life as well. I choose to trust her judgment. Don't make me regret that choice. What should I call her? The Queen paused at the door. Vera named her Kira. It means small star in our language. She opened the door, and her guards immediately came to attention. You'll receive official orders within the hour. Transport departs at 1400. I suggest you use that time to prepare. Queen Lyria swept from the room, her guards following. The door sealed behind her, leaving Marcus alone with the infant. Kira looked up at him, those large eyes reflecting the morning light filtering through the apartment windows. Marcus carefully lifted her from the sleeping pod and held her against his chest. Well, Kira, I guess we're both starting new assignments today. The child's hand gripped his shirt, holding on as if she understood everything that had just happened, as if she knew her survival now depended on a human soldier who'd made a promise to protect her. Marcus began packing. He had 7 hours to prepare for a posting that would define the rest of his life. 7 hours before he transported to a remote outpost with an infant who could trigger an interstellar incident if anyone discovered her true identity. He looked at Kira one more time. She had fallen asleep against his shoulder, breathing steadily, trusting him completely. Marcus had survived combat deployments, diplomatic crises, and situations that should have killed him a dozen times over. Surely he could handle raising a Veltheran princess whose existence threatened an empire. His terminal chimed. Official orders from Terran Defense Corps Command. Immediate reassignment to Outpost 17. Authorization for 1 dependent. All records sealed under diplomatic protocol. The Queen moved fast when she needed to. Marcus composed a message to his immediate superior, explaining his sudden transfer in the vaguest possible terms. Then he contacted Outpost 17's administration and confirmed his arrival time. Finally, he accessed Veltheran cultural databases and began downloading everything he could find about proper child rearing for their species. By the time transport arrived, Marcus had memorized basic Veltheran lullabies, nutritional requirements, developmental milestones, and emergency medical procedures. He packed 3 duffel bags with his personal belongings and 2 cases of supplies for Kira. The transport pilot raised an eyebrow at the bundle Marcus carried but said nothing. Orders sealed under diplomatic protocol meant you didn't ask questions. The journey to Outpost 17 took 36 hours. Marcus spent most of that time in his assigned cabin, feeding Kira, monitoring her vitals, and researching everything he could find about Veltheran royal succession law. The more he learned, the more he understood why Queen Lyria had made such a drastic decision. Kira's very existence proved that the Queen's sister had bonded with someone outside the approved bloodlines. In Veltheran culture, that meant Kira could potentially claim throne rights through both her mother's royal heritage and her father's lineage, whatever that might be. Multiple claim paths, multiple succession arguments, multiple factions who would see her as either a valuable asset or a dangerous liability. The kind of situation that started civil wars. No wonder Vera had run. No wonder the Queen had personally intervened. Outpost 17 appeared on the view screen as they approached. The station orbited a gas giant in an otherwise unremarkable system. Small by military standards, maybe 300 personnel total, split evenly between human and Veltheran staff, exactly the kind of place where people went when they wanted to be forgotten. Or hidden. Marcus gathered Kira and his belongings. The infant had been remarkably calm during the entire journey, sleeping most of the time, eating when necessary, never crying or fussing. He'd expected challenges. He'd read enough about childcare to know infants were supposed to be difficult. But Kira seemed to understand that silence meant survival. Too aware. Too controlled. The transport docked at 0820 station time. Marcus stepped onto the arrival platform and found himself facing a Veltharan woman in civilian liaison attire. Her scales bore the same violet-silver pattern as Kira's. Vera. She stood perfectly still, eyes fixed on the bundle in Marcus's arms. Tears tracked down her face, but she didn't move. Didn't reach out. Professional discipline holding her in place even as her entire world focused on her daughter. Marcus crossed the platform and carefully transferred Kira into her mother's arms. Vera collapsed to her knees, clutching her daughter, finally allowing herself to break. The sounds she made were soft, controlled, a mother's grief expressed in the most private way possible. Kira made a small noise, recognizing her mother, reaching up to touch Vera's face. Marcus stood watch, giving them this moment, scanning the arrival area for threats even though he knew Queen Lyria's guards were already in position. He recognized the signs now that he knew what to look for. Veltharan Royal Guard didn't wear armor on civilian stations, but their posture gave them away, 3 of them stationed at strategic points around the platform, protecting a princess who wasn't supposed to exist. After several minutes, Vera stood, still holding Kira. Her eyes met Marcus's, and he saw the same expression she'd worn 3 years ago when he'd pulled her from the firefight. Desperate gratitude mixed with the weight of debts that could never be repaid. Captain Chen. The Queen told me what you did, what you're doing. Vera's voice was steady despite the tears. I don't know how to thank you. You can start by showing me where family quarters are located, and then you can help me figure out how we're going to make this work. Vera managed a small smile. This way. The outpost's family quarters were more spacious than Marcus expected. A shared common area connected 2 private suites, each with sleeping quarters, workspace, and basic facilities. Vera's belongings were already installed in one suite. Marcus's would go in the other, living arrangements that looked professional but allowed a mother to be near her child. Over the following days, Marcus settled into his new assignment. Outpost 17's mission focused on monitoring ship traffic, maintaining communication relays, and facilitating cultural exchange between human and Veltharan personnel. Boring work by military standards, perfect for people who needed to disappear into routine. Marcus and Vera established a routine of their own. Vera handled most of Kira's direct care during off-duty hours. Marcus assisted when necessary and covered for Vera during her official liaison shifts. To the rest of the outpost, they appeared to be colleagues sharing childcare responsibilities. Close observers might have noticed that Kira bore a striking resemblance to Vera. But most people didn't look that closely. And those who did received quiet warnings from the Royal Guard to mind their own business. Weeks passed, then months. Kira grew stronger, more aware, beginning to recognize faces and respond to voices. She showed remarkable intelligence, tracking conversations with those large eyes, absorbing everything around her with intense focus. Marcus found himself genuinely attached to the child. He'd expected protecting her to be a duty, a promise kept because promises mattered. Instead, caring for Kira became something more personal. When she smiled at him during feedings, when she reached for him when frightened by strange sounds, when she fell asleep against his shoulder, trusting him completely. This was what humans did. They protected those who couldn't protect themselves, not because of orders or duty, but because it was fundamentally right. Vera noticed his growing attachment. One evening, after putting Kira to sleep, she joined Marcus in the common area. You care about her. Of course I do. I mean really care, not just protecting her because the Queen ordered it or because you owe me a debt. Vera sat across from him. You love her. Marcus considered denying it, but Vera deserved honesty. Yeah, I do. Good. Vera smiled. She needs that. Needs someone who sees her as a child, not a political problem. She paused. The Queen sent me a message yesterday. Her investigation is progressing. She's identified several suspects in the court who wanted Kira dead, but eliminating them without causing larger problems will take time. How much time? Years, possibly. Maybe longer. Vera looked toward the bedroom where Kira slept. My daughter might grow up here, on this outpost, far from Velthar, away from royal courts and succession politics. There are worse places to grow up. Under your protection? Vera's expression softened. No, there are no better places. Marcus didn't know how to respond to that. He'd spent his entire career focused on duty, following orders, completing missions. Personal connections were complications, attachments were vulnerabilities. But looking at Vera, thinking about Kira sleeping in the next room, he realized some complications were worth accepting. Some vulnerabilities made you stronger rather than weaker. I made a promise to protect her. I intend to keep it, however long that takes. Vera reached across the table and took his hand. Then we do this together. Co-parents to a child who shouldn't exist but deserves every chance to live. She squeezed his fingers. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. The months became years. Kira celebrated her first birthday with a small gathering in their quarters. Marcus and Vera taught her to walk, supporting her first unsteady steps. They taught her words in both English and Beltheran, watching her develop into a remarkably intelligent child who absorbed languages with ease. The royal guard remained present but distant, watching over their small family without interfering. Queen Lyria sent occasional messages, updates on her investigation, reassurances that she hadn't forgotten about them. Outpost 17 became home. The other personnel accepted Marcus, Vera, and Kira as just another unusual family in a place full of unusual situations. Nobody asked difficult questions. Nobody reported suspicious circumstances to their superiors. The isolation that made the outpost a perfect hiding place also made it a perfect home. Marcus continued his duties as senior human liaison, handling diplomatic protocols and cultural exchange programs. Vera performed her role as Veltheron cultural liaison, facilitating communication between species. Together they created something neither had expected, a life built around protecting a child whose mere existence threatened an empire. Kira grew into a bright, curious 3-year-old who asked endless questions about everything she observed. She learned to read in both languages. She studied star charts with Marcus and cultural histories with Vera. She played with children of other outpost families, making friends without understanding that she was different from them. At night, Marcus would read her stories about Earth and Velthar. Kira would listen with absolute focus, memorizing details, asking questions that demonstrated intelligence far beyond her age. "Why did my grandmother send me away?" Kira asked one evening. Marcus and Vera exchanged glances. They'd known this question would come eventually. Kira was too smart not to notice the royal guard, too observant not to realize her situation was unusual. Vera knelt beside her daughter. "Because your grandmother loves you and wants you to be safe." "Safe from what?" "From people who don't understand that you're special. People who would hurt you because they're afraid of change." Vera touched Kira's face gently. "But you're here now, where people who love you can protect you. Where you can grow up without fear." Kira considered this her young mind processing concepts too complex for most children her age. Then she looked at Marcus. "Will you always protect me?" Marcus met those impossibly large eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at him from a bundle on his doorstep years ago. "Always." Kira smiled and wrapped her arms around both of them. "Good, because I love you both." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. This child wasn't his by biology or birth. But she was his by choice, by promise, by every moment spent caring for her over the past 3 years. This was family, built not through blood but through commitment. That night, after Kira fell asleep, Marcus stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars. Vera joined him, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly, taking her in, accepting this assignment. "Giving up your career advancement to hide on a remote outpost?" Marcus thought about the question honestly. His career had effectively ended the moment he opened his door and found an abandoned infant. Officers with his experience and record usually advanced to command positions to important assignments. Instead, he was stationed at an outpost most people forgot existed. But he thought about Kira's laugh when he played with her, her excitement when she learned something new, her absolute trust that he would always keep her safe. "No regrets," Marcus said. "Not even one." Vera leaned against him, comfortable with the physical closeness that had developed naturally over years of co-parenting. The Queen's latest message said the investigation is nearly complete. She's identified all the conspirators. Within the year, she'll have neutralized the threats. Which means Kira might be able to return to Velthar, to grow up as royalty, to claim her heritage. Vera's voice carried mixed emotions. Everything I wanted for her. Everything I ran to protect. Marcus understood the implication. If Kira returned to Velthar as recognized royalty, Vera would go with her. The makeshift family they'd built would dissolve. Marcus would return to regular military service, Their lives would diverge. The thought hurt more than he expected. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. Vera was silent for a long moment. "I want my daughter to have every opportunity. I want her safe. I want her happy." She turned to face him directly. "I want her to have both her mother and the man who's been her father in every way that matters." Marcus's breath caught. "Vera, you love her. She loves you. The three of us work as a family." Vera's eyes held his. "When the time comes to return to Velthar, I want you to come with us. Not as a bodyguard or protector. As her father. As my partner. If you want that." Marcus had made countless important decisions in his career. Tactical choices under fire, strategic calls that affected missions, life or death judgments. But none of them compared to this moment. He could say no, could maintain professional distance, could return to his previous life when this assignment ended, or he could choose the family he'd built, the child he loved, the woman who trusted him with everything she valued most. Marcus pulled Vera close, holding her the way he held Kira when she needed comfort. "Yes, if you'll have me. If the Queen allows it. If Kira wants it, then yes." Vera wrapped her arms around him and they stood together at the viewport, watching stars that spanned the distance between their two species, a human soldier and a Veltharan princess, building something impossible in the darkness of space. Building a family. The final message from Queen Lyria arrived 6 months later. Encrypted, marked with royal seals. Addressed to both Marcus and Vera. They read it together while Kira played in the other room, unaware that her future was about to change dramatically. Lieutenant Vera Cetis. Captain Marcus Chen. The investigation is complete. All threats have been neutralized. The succession crisis has been resolved through channels that will not concern either of you. Kira may return to Velthar safely. She will be recognized as legitimate heir, fourth in line to the throne with all rights and privileges that entails. However, her return comes with conditions. First, her father must be officially identified. The records will show that she is the daughter of Lieutenant Vera Cetis and Captain Marcus Chen, bonded through human Veltharan customs. This is now legal fact, regardless of biological reality. Anyone who disputes this will answer to me personally. Second, Captain Chen must accept noble status within the Veltharan Empire. As father to a recognized heir, he cannot maintain purely human military rank. He will be granted the title of Lord Protector, a position created specifically for this situation. His duties will include overseeing Kira's security and education until she reaches maturity. Third, your family will maintain residences both on Velthar and in human space. Kira must understand both her heritage and her father's people. She will be raised to bridge our species, to represent the alliance we have built. These conditions are not negotiable. Accept them and return home. Refuse them and remain on Outpost 17 until Kira reaches majority and can make her own choices. I await your response. Queen Lyria Kethval Marcus read the message 3 times, processing implications. The Queen was legitimizing their relationship retroactively, creating legal fictions that would protect Kira's status. But she was also binding Marcus to Velthran nobility, effectively ending his human military career. "She's asking you to give up everything," Vera said quietly. "Your career, your species' chain of command. Your identity as a human soldier. She's asking me to be Kira's father officially instead of unofficially." Marcus looked toward the other room where Kira was singing to herself. "That's not giving up everything. That's gaining everything. You'd accept noble status? Leave Terran Defense Corps? Live on Velthar?" Marcus turned to face Vera directly. "I'd accept whatever status, give up whatever position, live wherever necessary to stay with Kira, with you, with our family." He took her hands. "The Queen is making official what's been true for years. I'm Kira's father. You're my partner. We're a family. Everything else is just paperwork." Tears tracked down Vera's face. "You're sure? Once we accept these conditions, there's no going back. You'll be bound to Velthar, to nobility, to politics and court intrigue and everything that comes with raising a royal heir." "I'm sure." Vera kissed him then, fierce and desperate and grateful. When they finally separated, she whispered, "Then we go home, all 3 of us, together." They composed their response to Queen Lyria together. Formal acceptance of all conditions. Request for reasonable time to prepare Kira for the transition. Gratitude for the Queen's intervention and protection. Within hours, the reply came back. Transport would arrive in 2 weeks. Arrangements were being made for their arrival on Velthar. The royal household was preparing suitable accommodations. Everything was proceeding. Marcus and Vera spent those 2 weeks preparing Kira for the massive changes coming. They explained carefully, using concepts a 4-year-old could understand. She would be leaving the outpost, going to a new home, meeting her grandmother, the Queen, living in a place called a palace. Kira absorbed it all with her characteristic intelligence. She asked questions, expressed excitement about new experiences, showed no fear of the unknown. But the night before departure, she crawled into Marcus's lap with a worried expression. "Father, will people on Velthar try to hurt me?" Marcus pulled her close. The word father still made his chest tight every time she used it. "Some people might not understand how special you are. But your mother and I will always protect you. And your grandmother, the Queen, has made sure the dangerous people can't hurt anyone anymore. But you'll stay with me, even on Velthar?" "Always. That's a promise I made a long time ago, and I always keep my promises." Kira hugged him fiercely. "I love you, Father." "I love you too, small star." Unlike the small military vessel that had brought Marcus to Outpost 17, this was a royal ship, elegant, armed, designed to make statements about power and prestige. Queen Lyria herself stood on the arrival platform when they docked at Velthar's orbital station, full royal regalia. Honor guard and ceremonial positions. Diplomatic observers from a dozen species watching the unprecedented scene of a Veltharan queen greeting a human soldier as family. Marcus carried Kira down the ramp, Vera walking beside him. They dressed formally but simply. This wasn't about matching the queen's grandeur. This was about being a family arriving home. Queen Lyria studied them for a long moment. Then she smiled, a genuine expression of warmth that few people ever saw from her. "Sister, brother, niece, welcome home." She emphasized the words deliberately. Sister for Vera, brother for Marcus, making their relationship official in front of witnesses who would carry the story throughout the Empire. Kira looked at the imposing figure of her grandmother with wide eyes. Then she smiled with the absolute fearlessness of a child who knew she was loved and protected. "Hello, grandmother. I'm Kira. Father says you sent me away to keep me safe. Thank you." The queen's expression softened in ways that made her look almost vulnerable. She knelt to Kira's level. "Yes, small star. I sent you away so you could grow strong and safe. And now you're home, and you'll never have to leave again. Can father and mother stay too?" "Always." "They're family now, by my word and by law." Kira threw her arms around her grandmother's neck, hugging with the uncomplicated affection of childhood. Queen Lyria embraced her carefully, this powerful woman who commanded star systems, reduced to tears by a 4-year-old's trust. After a moment, the queen stood, still holding Kira, and addressed Marcus directly. "Lord Protector Marcus Chen, you saved my sister's life. You protected my niece when she had no one else. You built a family from duty and promise, and made it real through love." She placed one hand on his shoulder in formal recognition. "The Veltharan Empire honors you. I honor you. Welcome to our household." Marcus inclined his head respectfully. "Your Majesty, I serve Kira and Vera. Everything else follows from that." "Then you understand nobility better than most who are born to it." The queen turned to address the assembled observers. "Let it be known throughout the Empire. Lord Marcus Chen, his bonded partner Lieutenant Vera Cetis, and their daughter Kira Cetis Chen are under royal protection. They are family. Anyone who threatens them threatens the crown itself." The declaration rippled through diplomatic channels within minutes. By the time their transport reached the surface, every major government knew that a human soldier had been adopted into Veltharan royalty, that an abandoned princess had been saved by someone from another species, that the alliance between their peoples had just become personal in ways that would reshape politics for generations. Marcus didn't care about politics. He cared about the little girl holding his hand as they walked through palace corridors, about Vera beside him, finally home after years in exile, about building a life for their impossible family in a place that had once seemed unreachable. They were given quarters in the family wing of the royal palace. Spacious rooms, private gardens, everything designed for comfort and security. Kira ran from room to room, exploring with childish enthusiasm. That night, Marcus stood at a window overlooking Velthar's capital city, millions of lights spreading across the landscape, a civilization that had existed for thousands of years before humans left their homeworld. And somewhere in this ancient empire, a human soldier had somehow become father to a princess whose existence had nearly destroyed everything. Vera joined him at the window, wrapping her arms around his waist. Having second thoughts? About you? About Kira? Never. About being Lord Protector of the Velthoran Empire? About living in a palace? About raising a child who's fourth in line to the throne? Marcus pulled her close. All of that is just circumstances. What matters is the three of us. Everything else we'll figure out together. Together, Vera agreed. Kira's voice called from her bedroom. Father! Mother! Come see! The stars look different from here. They found her at her window, face pressed against the glass, staring up at the night sky with wonder. Marcus lifted her so she could see better. They're the same stars, small star, just seen from a different angle. But they're beautiful. Can you teach me their names? All of them? It'll take years to learn them all. Kira smiled up at him. That's okay. We have years, right? Marcus looked at Vera, saw his own emotions reflected in her eyes. Hope, love. Commitment to something that shouldn't have worked but had become the foundation of their lives. Yes, Marcus said firmly. We have years, as many as we need. And standing there, in a palace on an alien world, holding his daughter while his partner stood beside him, Marcus Chen realized something profound. He'd spent his entire career preparing for combat, for duty, for sacrifice. He'd trained to protect humanity from threats, to maintain order, to serve with honor. But the most important mission of his life had started with a chime at his door at 0247 hours, with an abandoned infant who needed protection more than she needed politics or protocol, with a promise made in the darkness that had somehow transformed into a family built across species lines. Humans protected those who couldn't protect themselves, not because orders demanded it, not because duty required it, but because it was fundamentally who they were. And sometimes that protection became something more, became family, became love, became a life worth building, even when every rational argument said it was impossible. Kira yawned against his shoulder. I'm tired, Father. Then let's get you to bed, small star. Marcus carried her to her room, Vera following. They tucked Kira into bed together, both of them bending to kiss her forehead. The royal guard stationed outside their quarters maintained their vigilant watch, but inside these rooms they were just a family saying goodnight. As they left Kira's room, Marcus heard her whisper one more time. I love you both. We love you too, they answered together. And in that moment, Marcus understood why the Queen had taken such drastic measures, why Vera had risked everything, why none of the politics or succession concerns or diplomatic complications really mattered. Because love, whether human or Velthoran or something built between species, was worth protecting at any cost. It was worth risking empires for. It was worth building impossible families around. It was worth promising to protect, no matter what challenges came next. Marcus took Vera's hand as they walked to their own quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Kira would begin formal education befitting a royal heir. Marcus would learn his duties as Lord Protector. Vera would navigate the complex politics of returning to court after years of exile. But tonight, they were simply a family. Together. Safe. Home. And that was more than enough. Outside their window, the stars of Velthar sparkled in configurations Marcus was still learning. Constellations that humans had charted, but Veltharan children learned from birth. The same stars that had witnessed the beginning of the alliance between their species, the same stars that would watch as an impossible family proved that some bonds transcended biology. Marcus pulled Vera close, holding her as they looked out at those stars together. No regrets? She asked softly. Marcus thought about the question one final time. Thought about the career he'd left behind, the life he'd given up, the simple existence as a human soldier that he'd traded for the complexity of Veltharan nobility. Then he thought about Kira sleeping peacefully in the next room, about Vera in his arms, about the family they'd built from duty and promise and stubborn refusal to let an innocent child become a political casualty. No regrets, Marcus answered. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And somewhere in the palace, Queen Lyria Kethval received a report from her guards that her family had settled into their quarters safely. She read it with satisfaction, knowing she'd made the right choice years ago when she'd found a human soldier protecting her sister's child. Humans could be trusted with the Veltharan Empire's most precious treasures, not because of treaties or alliances or diplomatic agreements, but because when it mattered most, they chose to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, even when it cost them everything, especially then. The Queen closed the report and looked out at her capital city. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new political maneuvering, new threats to manage. But tonight, her family was whole. Her niece was safe. Her sister had come home. And the alliance between humans and Veltherin had been strengthened in ways that no treaty could ever accomplish, because sometimes the most powerful bonds were built not through negotiations, but through a single act of compassion at 0247 hours, when a soldier opened his door and found a child who needed saving. Everything else followed from that moment. Everything that mattered began with choosing to protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. That was the strength of humanity. That was why the alliance would endure. That was why Queen Lyria would spend the rest of her reign ensuring that the family who had proven that truth would never face danger again. Because some promises were worth keeping, some families were worth protecting, and some bonds transcended everything else, even the vast distance between stars.